Okay, Paul. Today's quick fix is resilience. What do you mean by that?
Hey, Matt. Hey, everybody. We think of resilience as your ability to cope intellectually and emotionally when change happens, when something unexpected happens. And so it's sort of like how you stay grounded, how you think clearly, and how you're moving forward when things are not going to plan. That's quite a specific
Huh.
definition of resilience versus sort of the more general ones you see. But we find that it's actually quite helpful to think about it in those terms because it helps you figure out how to hone it if you have a kind of clearer and more narrow definition of what it is.
Yeah, because we talked about adaptability a few weeks back. So how describe the differences?
Yeah, so I think we have a lot of conversations about this, and I do think it actually does make sense to separate out these two terms, both of which are quite powerful. Again, you often think about adaptability and resilience almost interchangeably, right? And so, because, for example, the ability to adapt is a sign of being resilient, for
Right,
example.
right.
Um, but when we talk about resilience, interestingly, it's sort of connected to some of the other things that we've been talking about over the past few weeks as well. Like, for example, if you think about motivation and the way that we describe motivation, uh, and and the concept of like somebody who really has mastered motivation is mastering the fact that their desire to do things is increasing or decreasing over time, and they're kind of learning to ride the wave.
Mm.
Motivation might be that sort of like mastering the ups and downs of the day to day and the week to week. Resilience you can think of as sort of mastering the ups and downs of month to month and
Mm.
and year to year, right? As things are not going as you would expect them to, you're able to be able to to deal with that reality, the reality that life is not always sunshine and roses.
Yeah.
So if you think about the resilience as that sort of of the thing that keeps you going when times are tough, then you can think about adaptability as being almost like the practical or a practical response to the changing circumstances. It was A, it's now B, and what am I what am I now doing differently
Mm.
because B is different to A? And of course, we adapt in all kinds of different ways that are both positive or negative in nature. It's not just dealing with the negative emotional response that you might have or being able to persist through dark times. Adaptability could be a very very positive thing. I could if I gave you $1 billion today, Matt, you would adapt what you do
I would.
based on the fact that
I,
you've now got $1 billion, right?
you
Um,
would see a few differences.
yeah, and that's
Yeah.
not necessarily that's not necessarily going to require an enormous amount of resilience. Now that I've just made you independently wealthy, so these are different things, although they are connected to each other.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Now you got me thinking about what I do with $1 billion real quick. Um, but yeah, so if you adapted, it's almost like adapting is happening anyway and is in little small pieces.
Uh huh.
Resilience is the ability to deal with that happening over and over and over again,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, another way of putting it, and I think the really interesting thing about this is that there are there are two components to resilience. One which gets talked about a lot, and one which doesn't get talked about very much, right? And so the one that's talked about a lot is, you know, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. This idea of like when bad things happen, it there's a purpose that it is serving, which is to make you be able to deal with the things that come along later. Because you're like, well, it's tough, but I've been through tough times before, which is why, assuming that you make it through the tough times, it does actually give you the ability to be able to do it more effectively.
Mm.
That is this is one aspect of resilience, but the second aspect of resilience is is really the thing that you can learn, right? Versus the thing that you naturally get. And the thing that you can the things you can learn are your approaches, right? So what is what's your response when the bad thing happens? You can you can work on that. You can
Mm.
work on how to respond effectively. And this is almost like the let's say a skill that you might learn in an emergency room or something like that. So let's say that you're working in an ER and you get a whole bunch of people come into the ER, and let's say there's a terrible incident, a mass incident causes a whole bunch of people to come in and a whole bunch of people die. That will Experiencing that and going through that will help build your resilience. But even before you got there, you have had some training in order to be able to process these things really effectively so that it doesn't pull you down in the first place. So there is
Mm.
this sort of stuff that just happens, but then there's also the stuff that you can learn.
And why do you think then that resilience is such a big deal right now, in
Mm.
particular?
Well, I think there are two or three things that are all happening at once. So, one is something that we've talked about a great deal, which is just this idea of in a world where work is not very clearly defined, where job descriptions are not clearly defined, where it's not clear what good looks like, um, and in a world where there is much less high quality human interaction in the same way that there used to be. In that kind of uncertain world, it can be it can cause pull an emotional toll on us. And then related to that is the fact that we live in a we live in a society which is, it's well known that our society is very divided right now. And so the sort of underlying climate in which we live is one of division,
Mm.
sometimes anger, and then economic uncertainty. And then on a work level, you layer on top of that, there's a huge amount of uncertainty for many people about our roles, right?
Mm.
We don't know that the job that we do today will still be there in for many of us. We don't know if it's going to be there in 6 months' time, but we certainly don't know if it's going to be there in 3 years' time, 5 years' time, 10 years' time. And most futurists believe that the roles we that people will be doing, if they'll be doing them, don't even exist today.
Mm.
So this is a climate that has a bunch of fear and a bunch of uncertainty associated with it before you get to the individual challenges that individuals face.
Right.
And so the backdrop of all of this is one of great uncertainty, which is why you see measures, even measures that don't seem even directly connected to this. But for example, consumer sentiment is way down right now, and that's a reflection of just how people are feeling about the environment that we're in. So it's very easy to get overwhelmed and just feel like you've lost your mojo in this type of environment.
Yeah, overwhelmed, stuck, just frozen. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so where does resilience come from?
Well, we've talked about the sort of core elements already. This idea of yes, it does come from getting through tough times, and that it also comes from sort of short term or techniques that you can learn. I guess I'll dive in a little bit more to the technique part of it. The real key to it that is taught in areas where a certain level of resilience is needed. The real key is to be able to effectively and dispassionately gain an understanding of what is going on, um, clear as much uncertainty as you can, prioritize how how you're going to respond, and specifically understand how you're going what your best first step is in responding. So there's something that I've taught for a while now called CTA, or Collect Triage Act, and it's it's really simple. Which is, the collect part is, okay, what's everything that I know about this, right? And what are the various, all of the pieces of information that I can know. What's knowable, right? And so if you can do that whole, like, this is what I can know about this. This is what I don't know about this. But this is the understanding that I have about the situation as a whole. And then the triage part is, of all the things that I could do in response to the thing that is impacting me right now, what's the most important thing to do, and then the next most important thing, and then the next most important thing. And
Yeah.
that most important thing could be as simple as, here's where uncertainty persists, so I'm going to go after that piece of uncertainty. Because the more we know about something, even if it's bad news, the more we know about something, the more we know what to do, then the less paralyzed we feel, and the more ability we have to take action.
Mm.
And then that last part is act, right? What's that first specific activity that I'm going to perform as a result of the challenges that I face? And so a lot of that is sort of moving you from somebody who is paralyzed by what's happening, and towards being somebody who is accepting the reality of what is happening, and now understanding what you're going to do about it. And that is a resilient behavior. It's something that you can learn regardless of the various things that have happened to you in the past.
Yeah. I mean, on one hand, uh, it's sort of a privilege to have the time to think and not react immediately.
Absolutely.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
of course, and that's like part of the battle for a lot of people, I'm sure. But gritting and bearing it and just pretending everything fine is certainly not a solution
No.
to
And
building that
and what we
resistance either.
Well, and the thing is, what's really interesting is that you're right. There is this challenge that goes on in our heads, which is, oh, I haven't got time to, like, step back and stop and think and so on. But it relates to that stuff we've referred to before, this sort of slow down to speed up type thing,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Sometimes this is why what I just described, similar versions of this exist on the battlefield and in the emergency room, right? That's why triage nurses exist and things like that, right? This is actually a more efficient approach, but it does take that courage is probably the wrong word, but it takes
yeah,
that discipline to actually stop and pause at the exact moment where you feel like you must respond, you must respond, you must respond. And people will be familiar with this, right? So, for
yeah,
example, in personal relationships, sometimes the our resilience is tested in a very personal way when, for example, you've got a friend who you're planning on doing something with, and they inexplicably ghost you, or something along those lines. And it might not feel like much, but it can be or it might, if you were looking at it externally, it might not feel like a big deal, but if you're inside it, it can feel awful, right? And and so sometimes people, like, knee jerk respond to that situation, or they, like, oh, they've cut me off, I'm cutting them off, or whatever it would happen to be. And in reality, just like stopping, pausing, saying, okay, what do I know about this situation? What do I not know about this situation?
yeah.
What can I, collecting all of the information associated with it, what does this mean dispassionately, and what should I do about it,
Hmm.
will often result in a different set of outcomes, a different set of activities that you perform, and a longer term, better outcome overall. That can happen over the course of minutes, right? So it
Right,
doesn't have to be a
right.
huge big deal. It's just an approach, a disciplined approach that you can use anytime that your resilience is challenged.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, it's almost like a meditation practice is the same kind of thing. Slow down, observe, kind of. It's really
Yeah.
interesting how much they meld together. Okay, so uh, what's one simple thing someone can do this week in terms of resilience?
Yeah. So I think that there's two elements that relate to these two components that we've talked about, right? The generalized, you know, tough things have happened in the past to help us be ready for today, and then the specific of the approach that one is going to use. I think that if we turn the one into two briefly, I think one activity is just to literally go back and obviously be careful about this. You don't want to dredge up old memories that can be really challenging for people. So, and if you need a thinking partner, or if anybody's fortunate enough to have a therapist, it can be a good way to do it with some supervision. But to consciously go back to a time that where things have been tough and you've made it through,
Mm-hmm.
that reminder can be really, really, really helpful in the medium term.
Mm-hmm.
But then, secondly, at a very small level, at a very small scale, pick something that is either happening right now or has just happened, and go through a version of this uh, CTA, or collect, triage, act activity, and particularly focus, I would say, on the collect piece. The collect piece, you talked about meditation. I would say stoicism
Mm-hmm.
is a really good backdrop to this as well.
Yeah.
On this collect piece, the key here um, is to try to be as dispassionate as you can be about it.
Yeah.
So in other words, what you're doing is you're collecting your information gathering, and you're doing it in a neutral way.
Yeah.
You're you're looking to gather the information that is associated with this, so that so you understand all of the information that you have, and you know what you know is what you know, and what you don't know is what you don't know. And even if it is as difficult as I can't afford the next mortgage payment or something like that, right? Or, something that looks very, very difficult, dispassionately gathering that information will guide you towards the activity that is happening. So try doing that, I would say, with a relatively small thing, and then get into the practice of regularly doing it anytime that your resilience is challenged.
Mm-hmm. Great. Well, we did it again. Perfect. Resilience fixed.
Awesome.
Uh, Before we head out, though, maybe give a couple of seconds to talk about the number of longer form interviews you've been doing on this channel, in case folks have missed them.
Yeah. So yeah, thanks, actually, Matt. The it's been really good. We've reverted to doing some more of these long form interviews, which I absolutely love doing, and I've got some great feedback from people on this, so I really, really do appreciate that. So the ones we're doing here, these fixed episodes, they drop every Tuesday. And whenever we have interviews, which is actually most weeks now, we drop the interviews on a Thursday. And in addition to the interviews, typically, once I've interviewed somebody, I'll do a kind of write up of not just the interview itself, but what I've discovered from the interview, and I put that on humanityworking.net. So humanityworking.net is, if you like, our one-stop shop, where we have like a newsletter, and then there are links to the podcast, and so on and so forth. And it's free to subscribe for. So if you go to humanityworking.net, you'll see those various interviews. But over the last few weeks and months, we've had CEOs. We have the CEO of, or Chairman Emeritus now, of WD-40, for example. And we've had some leading academics on the world of work. We've had really authors of really, really interesting books as well.
Yeah, it's been great. It's been really fun. So, what's next? What's the next interview people should look for?
So that's dropping. So today's Tuesday. That's dropping this Thursday. And it's with Reza Khalidar, and he's the president of the European Mentoring and Coaching Council, and he's the author of a book called The Contemporary Leader, which actually I have right next to me here. So there we go. Trying to get that on the screen properly. There we go. So, yeah, I found it really interesting, Matt, because his views on leadership have changed quite a bit, and they've been influenced strongly by different generations coming into the workforce, but then also by what's happening internationally in parts of the world outside, say, the US and Western Europe. So we had a good chat. We'll be releasing that in your feed on Thursday. You can get it in your podcast feed, and as I say, we drop these on YouTube as well.
All right. Well, that's out on Thursday, so listen to that. And in the meantime, we'll be back with another quick fix next Tuesday.
All right. Thanks a lot, Matt. Thanks, everybody.